Hello, this is Sue Frederick, and I want to have a mystical conversation with you, the kind where we lose ourselves in the wonders of divine mysteries, shared dreams from the other side, intuitive nudgings, and soul mission yearnings. We'll explore our journeys from the soul's wisdom. Why did we come here? What have we come to accomplish? And who did we come to love? These are all questions that we ask here in the physical realms, and yet the answer may only be found by lifting above the human story and looking at it from the soul's view. Now, many of you know that I've been doing this kind of work for 20-something years, and I'm an author of several books about it, including Your Divine Lens, Bridges to Heaven, I See Your Dream Job. And I'm also a master numerologist, an intuitive coach, and an ordained unity minister. But I say the best part of my work really comes from a training that I took to become a soul regression therapist trained by Dr. Linda Bachmann, who's an amazing soul and teacher, and you get to meet her today. She is my guest. And so I'm going to read a quick bio about her because she's here, and all these listeners, you're just going to be amazed by her story. Dr. Linda Bachmann is an expert psychologist and regression therapist with 44 years of private practice experience, including over 25 years guiding thousands of soul regressions in person and remotely. Linda has been conducting between lives soul regression training since 2002. She's the author of several books, including Souls on Earth, The Evolving Soul, and Bringing Your Soul to Light, featured on numerous broadcasts, including Dr. Oz, Coast to Coast AM, and Gaia TV. She regularly interviews spiritual wayshowers on her podcast called Souls on Earth. She was trained by the original, the OG, Dr. Michael Newton, who really was the pioneer of soul regression therapy. And she studied with him and she trained therapists with him for 6 years. And she's been conducting soul regression training programs in the United States, Israel, Japan, England, and the Netherlands. And then here's the great divine order piece for me here. She founded the Raven Heart Center and Training Institute in Boulder, Colorado in 1997. Now, it's so funny because you guys know I lived in Boulder for 40-something years, and yet I really wasn't ready for her level of work until I found her a year ago when I'm living here in Arizona. And there she is in my hometown, Boulder. She regularly conducts private sessions on Zoom, and she guides past life and between lives soul regressions, as well as offering spiritual mentoring and grief and loss support. She is an expert in understanding how reincarnation plays a pivotal role in our personal growth and relationships, significantly influencing humanity's progress. Her website is ravenheartcenter.com. Dr. Linda, I'm so happy to have you here. Say hello.
Oh, it's wonderful to be with you, Sue. This is just fun. And as you talk and give me that lovely introduction, I'm looking at my life and the steps of my life. Yes.
Well, I want you to share. You've had so many amazing experiences in your journey. One that I'm particularly intrigued by is you were a conventional psychotherapist for many years, and then you had this kind of pivotal shift to do the work you do now, doing soul regression therapy. Would you like to tell us about that?
Sure. So I'll just, I'll start, Sue, by saying that, well, I'm going to even back up an extra step. As I share as briefly as I can a bit of my story, I hope that listeners will be thinking about their own story because it's our life story, life events, life opportunities, life losses and challenges that show us, but as you said a couple of minutes ago, Sue, how we look at life from the position of who are we as a soul, not just who are we as a person. So with that said, okay. So when I was about 25 years old, I was married. I had my husband and I, who is still wonderful to say, still my husband. We had a 2-year-old. I was pregnant with a second baby. Very long story short, that was a very challenging touch and go kind of pregnancy. And I delivered that second baby alive, breathing, and he lived a few short hours. And back then I would have used the word die, and he died. It was probably among the most challenging early experiences of my early part of this life. So that put me on a path, not to spirituality yet, but that whole experience of the birth and passing of our second child, our second son, put me on basically on a path of understanding death, dying, grief, and loss. But in the beginning, from a conventional standpoint, from a more traditional, it's back in the days where Kubler-Ross was sort of the name of the person who was helping us understand stages of grief and all of that. So that's when I'm about 25 years old. Fast forward about 20 years later. So 20 years later, I become a practicing licensed psychologist, actually in the northern part of the state where you live, Sue. We've kind of traded states back and forth.
We did.
So I was in a group practice in the 80s and 90s in Arizona, and I was conventional as a therapist, which is fine. But my journey, my opening, my soul level decisions had not occurred until 1993. In 1993, I'm in this group practice of psychologists and psychiatrists. I co-founded that group with a very dear and close colleague. And that colleague, a man, in April of 1993, at the age of 32, died, transitioned, passed, whatever term now we want to use. He left the planet. It was very difficult to watch him go through this, terribly debilitating illness. It was very challenging to watch his wife and his family and his young daughter cope with this. And so he passed in April of 93. Within 48 hours of his passing, unbeknownst to me that this was coming, I began to have, and I love that you use the word mystical as the title of these conversations. I had mystical experiences that within my conscious awareness were completely new to me. And so basically what happened, he crossed over, and about 48 hours later, I had absolutely no doubt that he was talking to me. I could feel his energy. It felt a little odd only because I'd never had that experience. But on the other hand, it felt loving, supportive, and caring. And along with that, and I had read one book about reincarnation. I didn't even know if I believed in it back then in 93. And along with talking to him or sensing his communication, I believed that I was being shown by him scenes of past lives that his soul and my soul had shared. So the final really important piece here that I'll add in is that so my husband and I, fortunately, we've had basically a great partnership. The vast majority of our time, all marriages have challenges, but we'd had and still have a wonderful partnership. My husband was an academic, was a professor, and he spent about 30 years as a university professor. We have always been very politically, socially liberal people. But the curious piece of this is that we'd never talked about reincarnation. We'd never talked about the soul. So anyway, when I'm having this experience about 48 hours after my colleague's passing, I say to Earl, my husband Earl, you have to please sit down. I need to tell you what's going on. And as one might say to their spouse. And honey, if you think I'm just crazy, you can just tell me I'm crazy. So I told Earl what was going on, and I could tell, Sue, from the look on his face that he didn't think this was weird, even though we. And so I said, "Why do you look so calm?" And he said, "I guess here's why." He said, "I believe everything you're telling me." He said, "Only now do I remember what I repressed from my experiences as a child." And Earl said, "When I was a boy, about age 10, he told me, he said, I remembered my past lives in great detail. I knew they were my lives, but I never told anyone because I thought they'd think I was the weirdest kid, on the planet."
Oh my
And
gosh.
Earl fully forgot about that. So he gave me basically carte blanche
Yes.
to begin making a transition.
And may I say, what a beautiful soul agreement you have with Earl, who we all love. When we take your trainings, we all get to meet Earl. But, that soul agreement that says, all right, we're going to both grow in amazing ways in this lifetime, and we're not going to ever suppress or stop or be afraid of where we're growing and who we're becoming. That's a beautiful soul agreement.
Well, obviously, I only later came to understand a lot about my soul agreements, including Earl's and my agreements. But yes, and it's that I hope the listeners probably all can tap into this. It's like it's those places where we might say we're flying blind,
Mm-hmm.
and we need at times to fly blind as long as we're open to what might, sort of appear on our radar and not completely disbelieve it. So yes, I was flying blind back then.
Mm-hmm. And the best part of your story, in my opinion, is about that grief launched you on your journey to become a healer. And at first, you took the traditional path, psychology, to become a healer. And then your next great soul agreement with your business partner, occurred when you were ready for it in 1993. And he crosses over, and he's got such a good agreement with you that he instantly comes back and starts going, "Come on, Linda, wake up. You know more than you're acting like you know."
Yes, 100% true.
And you and I both work with a lot of grieving moms, and their stories are just like this, that they weren't sure if they believed in anything beyond the physical, and then their departed child came back, or their departed loved one came back and just woke them up. And so that's why I've been saying for decades, grief is our greatest spiritual teacher. It is not some random tragic event, which is the way much of the world sees it. It is our greatest moment of soul growth and awakening. And
I mean,
your work,
totally
Linda,
true.
shows that.
Yeah, totally true. And when you say what you say, I'll just quickly insert Sue this comment is that back before I was awake from a spiritual perspective, but with another woman who was also a bereaved mom, back, whatever this is, back in
Mhm.
the 70s. Yes, back in the 70s. We co-founded, I was living in the Southeast. I was living in Charlotte, North Carolina. Earl was on the faculty at University of North Carolina. And with this woman, we co-founded an agency called Kinder Morn. That agency continues to exist. They have their own building. They are supported by United Way. And we
Wow.
were aiding people to understand and cope with the passing of a child.
Wow. That is so beautiful. Linda, you're such a sacred soul. And I just got to share with listeners that, you all know I've been doing intuitive sessions based on numerology and intuition for decades. And, back in 2018, I went through a huge life change, and my numerology friends know that I was in a 9 personal year at that time, a year of surrender the old, reinvent. And my beautiful husband, Gene, was diagnosed with cancer at that point, and our whole lives were turned upside down. We left Boulder and moved to Arizona, and I'm very grateful to be here. I have the best friends here now. But at the time, we literally didn't know day to day if Gene was going to live and what our life was going to be like here. And so in that process is when I started looking for a deeper way to understand what I was going through. And I found a soul regression group session online and decided I would jump in and experience that. And my soul lifted up above my current story and showed me a completely new way of understanding why I had come to Arizona and everything. And that's when I said, okay, who can train me to do this? Because I want to help my clients do this. And Linda is the person. I mean, if you go and research soul regression training, Dr. Linda Bachmann is the world's expert in this. So I'm so blessed that I found you, because Linda, every session I've done since I took your training, I bring pieces of that. Even if the client doesn't want to sign up for the soul regression therapy, they just want a regular session with me, I'll bring in little pieces of the meditation and things to kind of lift up their perspective. And it helps them so much.
Well, clearly that's that same guidance system that you've been talking about, Sue, is that you and I were meant to meet. There are no accidents. You certainly know that. And it all fits together in this incredible tapestry that the higher realm coordinates and orchestrates.
And, on that note, you've written several books, but my favorite is Bringing Your Soul to Light. Did I get that name right?
That is correct. That's my first book. Yes.
Yeah. And in chapter 2, it's called The Benefits of Soul Regression. And you list a number of things, but I think you should talk about that now, because I think the average person going through their life kind of thinks a soul regression is pretty woo-woo or pretty out there. And yet when you really look at how it can help you, what things it can help you with, you realize, my gosh, it's not woo-woo. It ends up being very practical. So do you want to kind of list those things that a soul regression therapy session can help with?
Sure. And, it's interesting. Probably the list, could go on and on and on and on. But so like you, obviously people come to me for an individual soul regression, a between life soul regression. And we see how to put this into words. When the client comes for this type of regression, they bring a list, approximately 6 key questions, 5 to 6 key questions that they hope their guides will answer. And I say they hope their guides will answer. And so here's the important point about how does soul regression aid people, is that our spiritual guides, and for me, after 27, 28 years of guiding regression, I have absolutely no doubt that we all have benevolent, supportive, caring guides, spiritual guides. Call them guardian angels, call them what fits for for any of the listeners. But so when the client comes for the soul regression, they bring these questions, and I say to the client, your regression content will be tailored by your guides, and our own soul is one of our guides, will be tailored by your guides to bring you the understanding, the awareness, the revelation about your soul, your current life that you need right now in order to move forward in your current life. And we ask the client's questions, and usually they're answered. So if I tried my best to think about, so what are the benefits? Well, for some people, and this was certainly true for me years and years ago, that notion of are we truly immortal? What happens when we die? Is this lifetime, this body, all there is? One of the benefits is understanding and discovering that absolutely our lives are like, as I say, I think in one of my books, like pearls on a string. And sometimes some of those pearls are a little bit cloudy because we have certain challenges that show up. They're not all perfect, bright, lovely pearls. Some are, some aren't. But it's so I would say to people, probably the broadest or most common outcome for a soul regression, for a between life soul regression, is that we know we came before and we will continue on after this lifetime. And we have a plan that we put in motion for this life. And so, you might call that, what is predestined,
Right.
but we also have free will. We also,
I
so
love that. Yes.
we could, yeah, yeah.
And
So
you know
that's probably
that
the,
I love
yeah.
that because my clients and also my own personal quest, in 1980, when my first husband died of cancer, my own personal quest was, did I plan this life? Like what was I trying to learn? And do I have any free will in the journey? Because we all hit those points where we go, my gosh, why would I have planned a
Mm,
hard suffering event? Well, the soul sees it so differently. The soul is always going, hey, you're dropping into that physical world like going to school. So the harder you work, the more you're going to learn, And yet we also do, like you just said, we have these moments of free will where we can say, well, maybe I've gone as far as I can go in this particular lesson. And so perhaps we might have a revisit and change part of our plan. But that whole idea that, quit resisting the lesson. We actually
mm.
planned the lesson. That is so helpful to people.
Totally. And, in later years, after the challenging about 4 months of touch and go pregnancy, and then the birth and passing of our second child, many years later, when I, obviously stepped into this type of work that we're talking about, I came to understand I came to understand the purposes, the intentions
Mhm,
of of having that child come for a short time
mhm,
and pass, and that is the way it was intended to be, for learning, to balance karma, to
mhm,
balance past lives. And then somehow, Sue, I'm prompted, my guides dropped something into my brain a few
mhm.
minutes ago. I often don't add this into conversation, but somehow my guides are saying, Linda, just quickly, briefly, add in this piece of your story. So, and I'm not sure why they're saying that, but I'll share it anyway. So obviously, I birthed this baby in 1972. I birthed this baby without any medication. I'm in the hospital, so that's all fine. But in order to think maybe there will be viability of this baby, this 26-week baby,
Mhm,
I have no meds, and so I'm very. I still can remember that delivery
mhm,
experience. So that all happens. Fast forward, oh my goodness, 14, yes, 14 years later, um, our daughter, and so Earl and I had another child following the birth and death of second baby, and that is our wonderful and beautiful daughter.
mhm,
Um, and so our daughter, fast forward about almost exactly 14 years ago, actually. So our daughter is pregnant 14 years ago with her second child, obviously our grandchild. And let's see if I can make this kind of short. Our daughter gives us a call on a Sunday afternoon, and we live about 40 minutes apart. And she says, Mom, Dad, okay, I need you to come to my house. I'm in labor. She has a 3-year-old son, our grandson. So come to the house because our son-in-law and our daughter will soon go to the hospital to birth this baby. Come take care of our grandson. So great, fine. We go to their house, we get there. I spend the whole afternoon in our daughter's bedroom, timing contractions with her, the normal process. Our
mhm,
son in law's in and out of the bedroom. My husband is playing with our grandson. And in the evening, things intensify as they do in a normal birthing process. And our daughter gets up out of bed and goes to use the bathroom, comes back out of the bathroom. And I know, she knows I tell this story at times, so I'm not breaking any confidences here. And so she comes out of the bathroom and she gives me this really intense look, and she says, Mom, something's wrong.
Oh,
So I say, honey, just keep breathing. I call for our son-in-law, so he's there in the room with us. Mom, something's wrong. And I said, okay, just keep breathing. What do you think is wrong? She says, the baby's coming. Now, our daughter is a certified birth doula.
Mm.
She's also a psychologist. She'd already had a baby. So she says, Mom, the husband, our son-in-law, baby's coming. We get her down, we get her in a laying down position, and I take a look, and this baby happens to be a granddaughter. This baby, our grandchild, her head is already out.
Wow.
So I literally say to our daughter, please give us one more push. We need this baby born now. I get a little bit nervous because of the birth and passing of
Right.
my child, our daughter's sibling. And our daughter then gives us a push. Thank all the divine spirits and all of the baby is born. Baby is utterly fine. She's going to be 14 next week. She's just a beautiful person. But what the reason I'm sharing this is because I am convinced that Spirit gave me that opportunity to support the birth process of my grandchild and have nothing happen that was horrendous.
To heal yourself. Yes. Yes.
Absolutely. I really believe that. And I don't mean to be so egocentric about it.
No, that's exactly how divine order works. Linda, we're all given these amazing opportunities to heal our trauma because these guides are so loving. They have our best interest, because if we would all just really step up here and wake up on earth like that, like our guides want us to, we would shift consciousness to a higher vibration. And so, yes, they have our back. Yes, they're trying to help us heal while we're still here. Your story is beautiful.
Yes, amen, amen to what you just said. I totally agree.
I'm just reminded of so many things as you tell your story. My trauma was when Paul died and I was 29, and he suffered so greatly. It was the 70s when, cancer, he was diagnosed with colon cancer and basically given 2 weeks to live. And so we traveled a journey of conventional and alternative treatments. But in the meantime, he went through a year of great physical suffering, and then he died in my arms. But the whole process of it was so guided by the mystical, so that while I walked through the physical trauma with him, the mystical incidents that happened, including his death, where he actually showed me his spirit leaving his body, so I would have no doubt that we are souls and not just bodies. And then he came back that night, to wake me up and show me he was fine, and so many signs that Paul has actually come back since 1980 to help me heal my trauma of walking through his cancer with him, and help me see it in a new and better way so that I could help more people. And that's how spirit works.
It's totally how spirit works. I couldn't say it any better than you have said it. And so you know that mystery. I know that mystery. Many that are listening know that mystery. And it's about trusting the benevolence, the guidance,
Yes.
looking at the glass half full, not the glass half empty.
Right.
And that's not always easy, because we have challenges that, human challenges that are just very difficult to swim through. I won't say step over. We need to swim through them.
Right.
Um, but they're there absolutely with purpose.
Well, you've tapped into something I was ordained as a unity minister in June. I'm so grateful for the whole metaphysical journey of studying to be a unity minister, because it really rebooted my soul up to the next level of spiritual work in the world. And one of the great blessings is that I get to write talks on different topics. And so I've been writing this talk on the topic of courage. And it's so wonderful to immerse yourself in meditating on courage and what it means in life. And, everything you've just shared, I truly now believe that if we had to pick one quality to bring with us into a lifetime that would keep guiding us in the right direction, keep us from becoming bitter or cynical or negative, it would be courage, because courage comes from the heart, not the head. And it allows us to look at possibilities that the physical world is not showing us and open up to the unseen world, the mystical world, and trust it. That takes courage of the heart. Cynicism is easy. It is so easy to be a cynic and to say, I don't believe in anything beyond that I can't see or touch or feel. And yet when we open the heart courageously and go, maybe that dream really was my departed loved one, and maybe that face in the orb at my door, that picture I took, really was the face of Carol's departed son. Once we open that to those possibilities, life here shifts and we're able to walk the soul's journey we agree to walk here.
I mean, completely true. And, I knew this conversation with you, Sue, would be so organic and, just go where it needed to go. I'll add in a piece with what you've just said about courage and the heart that came up in a between life soul regression that I was guiding yesterday.
Cool.
Um, and in this regression, so I hope this isn't too big a stretch. Certainly not for you, Sue, but for
No,
listeners.
go for it.
So I learned years ago that when I'm guiding regression, we're looking for past lives, we're looking for where our soul comes from, et cetera, that some of us are souls that primarily incarnate on earth, and some of us are souls that come from elsewhere in the universe, benevolent, advanced locations, settings, celestial settings in the universe.
Mm-hmm.
And these are advanced souls that don't typically incarnate on earth. So yesterday, I was guiding a client in regression. Um, and she discovered a past life. I mean, so many details, it's too long to share the whole thing, but the piece that came up as you were talking. So she goes to a past life. She learns about actually a past life on earth. And then she crosses over, which is part, as you well know, Sue, is part of that between life soul regression. She crosses over, and we discover she is a soul that typically doesn't incarnate on earth. She goes to where where the other souls with whom she works are. And, I was like, stop for a minute. And some people are going to think this makes sense. Maybe other people are going to find this very new. It's not new for me. She goes to a spacecraft. And she's within this almost meeting room in the heart of the spacecraft. We learn a lot about the spacecraft itself, a lot about those souls. But the piece that came up was, so I said, okay, so you're here with your fellow group of souls. How do you communicate with each other? Do you literally talk? Do you have a literal language? And I know at times souls have some other type of means of communication. And so she says, yes, of course we have communication. It is not like human language. And she says, but we don't communicate from our heads or from our, what we might say, mental side or left brain. And she moves, I'm looking at my client on the Zoom screen. She moves her hands to her chest, to her heart area. And she says, and she's obviously, gesturing with her hands. She says, we take what is there in our mind, but we lead from our heart, and we merge the mind and the heart. But the heart is the leader, if you will, in how we communicate. Well, that's exactly, in my opinion, how
Yes.
we on earth need to be communicating.
Right. I mean, what she's showing us is, yes, that is the evolution of human consciousness that we're headed for, I believe, is that ability to say the left brain logic mind is not giving us the whole picture. And yet our culture right now in this time is so immersed in that perspective. And so when we meditate, when we do any kind of spiritual practice, we can quiet that mind and open the heart. And that's where the truth lives. That's where our soul's essence is. That's who we are as humans. We are souls with guided by heart. And yet, Linda, I think you'd agree with me that this conflicting, challenging time that we're all experiencing on Earth right now is because our consciousness is trying to shift from left brain
Mhm.
logic based, mental, everything's about cynicism and thinking and all of that, into the awareness that all that is good, but it follows the heart's wisdom, the soul's wisdom. And that's the shift we're trying to make in consciousness right now.
Exactly, exactly. And it's not wussy or,
Right.
oh, it's just about feelings. It's like, no, it's not just about feelings. But if we, if we were, well, example, such a beautiful organic conversation. If I agree with you, there are so many challenges going on the earth right now, but if people study any of the what we might call across the aisle agreements that have occurred and in the
Mhm.
United States Congress, those across the aisle agreements often have been orchestrated by women on each side.
Yes.
And that's because we're allowed to come from our feelings. And sadly, our culture teaches men, not all men are like that, but to not come from their feelings initially.
That's right. And that's the great shift because, politically, we're kind of seeing the damage that can occur when, men who are not in touch with their pain or their inner truth, lead from their crazy ideas. And so, women speaking from the heart, we've always been dismissed for that. I mean, I grew up in the 50s and I was surrounded by brothers and a engineering father. And when I would speak from my heart, it was completely bullied, that my opinion was emotional or whatever. Um, it spent years for me to say, no, my emotions are on purpose and my heart is true and good. And I am not going to hide it from the world. I'm going to actually create my whole career around that. And that was a
Exactly.
huge shift for me. And I work with so many clients, as I know you do too, who are so afraid to take that leap and do the illogical thing, but the thing that their heart is telling them to do.
Well, I think that for you and me, and probably a lot of listeners, I might not have taken the steps to move forward in certain career choices, or even for you, following Paul's death.
Yeah.
Um, you know, uh, oh my goodness. I mean, I'll just say this briefly as I say that. Sometimes we let ourselves get stuck.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we don't follow that strong impetus that comes from our heart. And when I just said what I said, make the comment about Paul's death, and this is probably true in your experience too, Sue. I couldn't possibly count the number of times I've guided a client to discover a past life. It's usually a client who's a woman,
Mm-hmm.
and the client discovers that she has been a woman in the past life. Now, it might be a male client in life today, but the client discovers that as a woman in past life, and part of its era of time, but that past life woman that they were, let themselves cave into loss, like
Yes.
daddy won't let me marry the man I want to marry, or
Right.
husband died, and they cave into depression and live out an unhappy life, not moving forward, following their heart.
and they're not fulfilling their soul mission, what their soul came to do and accomplish. I totally agree. And in fact, I thank Paul every day for putting me on the journey by breaking my heart wide open with grief, that I would wake up from my pattern of hiding my truth, feeling unworthy because I was intuitive and emotional and all these things that our world calls woo-woo. And now I embrace the woo-woo. I feel like we've got to change the whole paradigm here and say woohoo for the woo-woo. We need
Yes.
that other perspective. And I know that in my past lives as well, Linda, that I let myself be subdued and quieted and sort of bullied, and that I came in the South in the 50s to reenact that so that this time I could break the pattern. And it's not easy. Nobody here comes for a party. We're all here to have challenges and to overcome them, and I can say for probably every female client I've worked with, they have some degree of this moment of saying, I've lived up to everyone's expectations except my own. And now I have to shift it.
Completely, completely. And that's the journey of awakening. And as I'm sure you know, and again, I hope listeners know, that journey of awakening, even when, if I'm doing, which I could share similar things about my own life,
Mhm.
but if we allow that, then others allow it, because
Right.
it's not just about us, it's about the greater good of humanity, to step into that reality of who we are, and almost get the megaphone, not in a rude way, but
Right.
get the megaphone to say, I can't be anything other than who I truly am.
Oh, yeah. And that's usually a dark night of the soul that we hit. So, for example, I write in my books about how I was a single mom in the early 90s, and I had been a journalist. Like, I had found a way where I could write about health and healing and make a living from it. And I thought I was doing pretty good work, but I was still hiding my intuition, my spiritual awareness, my numerology. I was hiding all that. And when I hit my dark night of the soul, I had this young daughter. Nobody was helping me with money. I was about to lose my home, really. I was about to go bankrupt because my career had sort of ended. And I knew in a moment of deep meditation and deep pain, and when you're a single mom, all those single moms out there, I'll tell you what, if you've chosen to be a single mom in this lifetime, it means you wanted to hit your moment where you were willing to take a risk because your child's life needed you to live true to your
Mhm.
soul. And in that dark night of the soul, I said, I know that the only thing I'm here to do, and the only thing I've ever been good at, is guiding people with spirituality and intuition and numerology. And no, it's not mainstream, and I may crash and burn, but so help me God, I have to do it. And that changed my life.
It reminds me of a book that I don't even know if people can put their hands on this book any longer. F. Scott Peck's book of so long ago called The Road Less
Oh,
Traveled.
yes, of course. I love that book. I read it
And
in the 70s.
yes, exactly. And in that he says, he talks about depression, and he basically makes some comment. I obviously am only remembering the conceptual perspective on this, but he says depression, has to do with, there's a road you need to travel that you're not
Yes.
allowing yourself to travel.
Oh, so good. So perfect. Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh my
yeah.
goodness. Well, Linda, I think we could do this forever. So, on that note, do you want to tell people how they can sign up for your new event?
Sure. I'll just say to people, and they can go to my website and find various things that I'm doing, and opportunities and regressions and that sort of thing. But I regularly teach virtual courses, and they always have a different topic. They're always, of course, spiritually focused, and that sort of thing. So there's a new one coming up starting in late September. Now I'm going to try to remember the title. Spirit told me I was to put together a 4-month virtual course called Grief endings, and I'm not getting this exactly right. Grief endings and opportune moments. And
Beautiful.
so it's all about change and growth. And people can find out more by going to my website, ravenheartcenter.com. We meet live 3 times a month for 4 months. All classes are recorded. A lot of people are there live. A lot of people can't be there live. So yeah, just go to ravenheartcenter.com and there you'll find information.
Well, Linda, I have to say, of all the mystical conversations I've done, this one has been the most fun, and it feels like talking to an old soulmate sister here. And so if the listeners want to know more about Dr. Linda Bachmann, you'll go to her website, ravenheartcenter.com. If you want to know more about me and my books and my work, you can go to suefrederick.com. And both of us would love to help you in any way that we can to see your life and your challenges from your soul's wisdom, which is the most empowering perspective you can take. And on that note, thank you for being with us on this beautiful, mystical conversation.